Hello everyone, J.R. Dukes with JRDukes.com coming at you with another video. Today I want to talk about the George Floyd verdict. I want to talk to you about thoughts I have on the matter, and I want to talk to you about solutions that I have thought about, that I have frankly studied about, and I want to present them to you in such a way so we can start a calm dialogue pertaining to these issues. Everyone knows that I like talking about police abuse, police reform, anything to do with the police. If you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate you taking your comments and writing them below. Trial just ended. Fortunately, there was a verdict against the police officer, Derek Chauvin, and he was found guilty on all charges, as he should have been. Obviously, we all watched that video, and we were all shocked, to say the least, to see a man taken out, put on the ground, and essentially suffocated. I will tell you, and those of you who have been following my videos know that I'm not the kind of person that is this big anti-police guy. That's not me. I'm not a defund the police type of individual. I'm not about trying to hamper the police in any way. My goal, among many goals I have with my channel, is to shed light on what the police are doing in our daily lives. I like to help you in your interactions with the police. And obviously, at this pressing time in our country's history, it's important for us to look at and examine some lessons I think we can all learn from this particular case. So it is very important that we take a moment and reflect on exactly what has transpired and what we need to do going forward. So today I want to make this short video and share with you my personal thoughts on some things that we could probably learn from this particular case, and I have some suggestions on things that we all need to consider. And I definitely want to hear from you. I want to know if you agree with the points that I'm going to make in this video. Do you disagree with the points? Is there something you would like to add? Please take this time, comment below, share it with everybody. I do ask that you be very respectful, be very polite. Please do not start spitting out a bunch of hatred or nonsense. It's just not going to be conducive to what I'm trying to do here. For starters, the 3 points that I came up with are as follows. Number one, when this story has kind of ran its course and there's something else that has taken its place, we need to make sure that we do not forget about this incident, about this tragedy, about this murdering of this man by a police officer. We need to make sure that we keep it front and center. Number two, it's important to understand and realize that we all have a lot of work to do together. We need to calmly, intelligently, methodically, and with what I would call Christian love, sit down and work out these issues together. I'm reading a book right now called High Conflict, and I think it's a very timely book. The bottom line in this particular book is the author is making the point that we all know too well, and that is that instead of just having normal disagreements and trying to work on solutions, unfortunately we live in a society now where it's us versus them, it's you versus me, it's right versus wrong. It's if you're not with me, you're against me. If you don't see the world the way I see the world, that means you are a bad, bad person. It's to the point to where it's good versus evil. And this type of high conflict, to quote the author, is not workable. It's not sustainable. It's not going to solve anything except divide each and every one of us apart. So we must keep that in mind as I present some of the suggestions I'm going to present in this short video. I also want to make another point. It is my deliberate opinion that we all need to be cognitive of a few things. Number one, it is the case the news media keeps us all in a state of aggravation, in a state of being PO'd all the time. And we need to stop that. We need to recognize it's kind of a game theory type of business model that the news medias have. And I'm not saying any particular news media. I'm saying all the news medias do this. They put out things on the news that keeps us aggravated. And for some reason, it's just part of the human condition. It's part of human nature. We turn on our TVs. We look on our phones, we look on our iPads, we act like we can't get enough. And the more we read that stuff, the more we engage with that type of rhetoric, the more our senses get boiling mad, the more our blood pressure raises, the more aggravated we get, the less we are able to work out our differences with one another. And we just have to recognize it, because if you don't recognize it, you can't do nothing about it. And what you can do about it is understand what I'm telling you and put a stop to it. In other words, don't ignore what's going on, but just understand that it's designed to make you mad. It's designed to aggravate you. And you have to temper the amount of this nonsense, the amount of aggravation coming into your life, so you can live a good life, so you can live without aggravation, and you can work with other people to try to find solutions to these serious problems we have with policing here in America. The other point I want to point out is that the news media, in my humble opinion, works in such a way to where they stoke racial tensions between everybody, between blacks and whites, whites and blacks, Latinos and whatever. It's just something, in my opinion, that they do. The facts are this: the vast majority of people are great people. I don't care if they're black, white, Latino, Asian, whatever they are. I, like most people, don't judge people on their color or what they look like. I judge them on their character, and hopefully you're doing the same. I truly can tell you that in my personal life, I don't see race as an issue. It's just something that generally doesn't come up. I don't see people treating each other poorly because of their race. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying I've never seen it happen. What I'm telling you is I think it's overblown. I think it's played up in the press, and it's designed to keep you aggravated so you stay engaged with the news media, which puts profits in their pocket. If you notice on this particular George Floyd case, not one time did the defense use the word race. Not one time did the prosecution use the word race. It just never happened. It's not a race trial. It was a trial about a rogue cop, about a police officer that abused his discretion to do his job, that abused Mr. Floyd and killed Mr. Floyd. That's what it was about. Now, one time that they mentioned race. So I want you to think about that as we go forward in this video. The second point I want to make is we have a lot of work to do. That's one thing that is clear from this trial's conclusion, is there is a lot more work to do, and we all have to come together in Christian brotherhood and find solutions to these very serious problems. And number three, as I've basically been alluding to, we must come together in a calm, Christian, friendly manner and continue to work on these problems. We cannot just ignore it. It must be done calmly, it must be done immediately, and it must be done in perpetuity until and unless this policing problem here in America is solved. Now, a couple other thoughts that I have is, I know, like most people in America now know, that race is a problem when it comes to policing in America. I think that's pretty self-evident that there's a higher likelihood of somebody that looks like me might be treated one way versus someone else that might be black and might be driving in the inner city. I understand that. I personally don't believe it is as pervasive as the news media might make it out to be. However, I could be wrong about this. It's something that needs to be talked about. I'm just throwing it out there for you to consider. If you don't agree with me, write it below. Tell me in a comment so we can all talk about it as a community. I will tell you, in my personal opinion, what I think is the number one problem with our system of justice here in America when it comes to policing in America. And it is not so much race that makes everything unequal. What it is money that makes everything unequal. Because make no mistake about it, my friends, if you are a poor black man that gets arrested for a crime, you're going to receive a certain level of justice. That's going to be right about here. If you are a very wealthy black man, white man, it doesn't matter skin color at this point, and you're very wealthy, you're going to get another type of justice. We all know it. You're going to get better lawyers. You're going to get better representation. You're going to have better investigators that's going to be out trying to prove your side of your case. You are just going to get a lot more justice. And that, in my opinion, is not fair. And we need to seriously look at this particular disparity. And we need to find a way to mend this gap. Because I can tell you straight up, that even though you are now afforded an attorney to represent you if you have a legal jeopardy and you do not have the funds to pay for your own lawyer, what you are not generally told is the prosecution essentially has unlimited resources, where your public defender does not. If you don't believe me, just go downtown to whatever county you live in and just take a leisurely walk and see if you can get somebody to show you, give you a tour of the prosecutor's office. You're going to see state-of-the-art computers. You're going to see the best intelligent gear, electronic gear. You're going to see investigators. You're going to see all kinds of secretaries and paralegals and staff support, all this other type stuff. It's going to look like a very well-oiled machine, classy, professional, taken care of business. Then go down to generally the basement where the public defender's office is, and you will see the marked contrast that there is. What you're going to see is generally a couple desks piled up to the ceiling with all kinds of cases just flopped on the desk. Trust me, there is no justice in this type of system. What generally happens with these type of public defenders is your best bet as a defendant is definitely do not go to trial. If you go to trial, they penalize you. The courts will take what would have been 5 years and they'll make it 25 years. Your best bet when you're in that situation is, and everybody knows this, is you better take a plea. Whether you're guilty or not does not matter in our system here in America. It does not matter if you're guilty. What it does matter is you got to know when to get off, so to speak. In other words, if you are in that situation and you cannot afford your own legal defense and you have a public defender, you better have a good public defender that knows how to settle cases. And basically that's what they all do. They just cop out a plea. In other words, whether you're guilty or not, you'll show up in front of the court and you'll tell the honor, Your Honor, I'm guilty. Please have mercy on me. And generally they will have a sentence already pre-worked out where you're going to serve 5 or 10 years. It doesn't matter if you did it or not. It's generally less of a risk to go ahead and spend 5 to 10 years in jail than spend the rest of your natural life in jail. And that is just the sad truth of our system. And that is not right. That's what bothers me more than anything, and that is what needs to be changed. Let's talk briefly about some possible ways to reform our system of policing here in America, our system of judicial reform. Some things that we might be able to look at are the following. Maybe with the police, do not allow the police to carry guns. Maybe only have certain police officers that are allowed to carry guns. And I know that may sound kind of radical, but the reality is that's the way it is in Britain and some other foreign countries. They generally just have police officers with tasers or with basically nightsticks or club sticks, whatever they call them. And if they need the type of support that requires firearms, they generally call another division, similar to us calling in the SWAT. Except in America, our police officers are loaded to the gills with all kinds of deadly force. I mean, it's right on their hips. They have so much ability to kill you, it confuses them, as that recent story of that lady that unfortunately shot the other guy and killed him when she thought she was using her taser. That's how much deadly firepower our officers are carrying here in America. That seems a little crazy to me. I know of a neighbor that had a daughter that needed some medical help, and when they came out to give her medical help, The 3 or 4 officers that were there all had huge firearms on their side. The ability to kill immediately. That does not seem right to me. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be another system, another idea to use. Because the truth is, my friends, when you have deadly force ability with you, it is more likely to be used because it is an option that you have. How about more tracking? In other words, why do we have police officers out there that do not have body cams? I do not understand this. You and I both know that when officers have body cams, everybody behaves differently. It's part of being human. When you're on video, you know you're on video and you know you're going to be on your best behavior. So an individual contacting the police is going to be on their best behavior because they know they're on video, and the police officer is going to behave themselves and do everything by the book and do everything professionally because they know they are also on video. So I think it should be mandatory that every single officer in this country has to have a body camera on anytime they are in the process of their official duties. It's just that simple. Can you imagine this George Floyd case without having body cameras or without having the cameras of the citizens that took the actual footage of his murder? I mean, there probably wouldn't be a case. So it's very important that all these officers are mandated by law to have a body camera on them. Another issue that I think is very important to reform policing is we need to get rid of these cop unions that protect these police officers' jobs. I know firsthand, after talking and listening to other chief of police talking, it's almost impossible to get rid of a bad cop in some areas, because when you fire a police officer, they have a right to appeal through their labor board, through their union. And more often times than not, the union makes the local police jurisdiction accept back the rogue cop, the bad cop that was terminated for cause. So if you can't get rid of bad cops, you're going to just have more bad cops, and they know it. So this has to be changed. Obviously, more training is a common sense solution. Obviously, the police officers need to be constantly trained and retrained on procedures, how to de-escalate conflicts, how to act professionally, how to be aware of their own biases. Any industry that I've ever been a part of, and I have worked in the service industry, the trades, for my entire life, and I can assure you that as a licensee, you are required to take extensive, what they call CE, continuing education, on a yearly basis. I'll tell you another problem that's out there that I know firsthand again. There are some jurisdictions here in America, the police department will not take a complaint from a citizen. They'll say, hey, we don't have any complaints from citizens. Well, guess what? The reason they don't have any complaints is because they don't take the complaints. And I'm not joking. I'm not going to name the particular city and jurisdiction I was in, but I went in there and I was like, I'd like to make a complaint against a particular police officer. And the woman behind the desk says, well, why do you want to make a complaint? And I'm like, well, I have a complaint. It doesn't really matter why. I just want to make a complaint. Can I have the form? And this particular lady said, sure, it's not a problem, but you have to wait till the chief gets back, because you have to speak to the chief of police before you're allowed to make a complaint in their particular jurisdiction. And I'm like, well, how long is this going to take for the chief to get back? And she basically told me that it could be 3.5 hours. And remember in another video, I told everybody, hey, what are people saying that they're not saying? Well, let me tell you what she was saying that she wasn't saying. She was telling you it is never going to happen. The chief of police is never going to come back. And it's basically an exercise in tenderizing. In other words, you can sit there in the chair and wait for the chief of police as long as you want. And when you've had enough pain of sitting on your backside, and you're aggravated enough, you'll march away without filing a complaint, and then they have no complaints to deal with. That has to stop. That's wrong. That's criminal. That should never be allowed in America. So, my friends, in conclusion, I want to tell you this. I love our country. I love our police. I love everything that our country stands for. We are the best civilization that God has ever made in all of human history. We are very fortunate to be living here in America. Make no mistake about it. And friends, I understand it's not perfect. I understand that there are racial issues. I understand that there's inequality and unfairness. But the truth is, life is not fair. Life was never promised to be fair. Life is a risk. Life is a gamble. It is the fact that our country is special. And we can do better than what we've been doing. We don't have to be at each other's throats and spewing a bunch of hatred and a bunch of venomous nonsense at one another. It's not necessary. We are all adults. We are all children of God, and we can all come together and find solutions to these problems that are front and center. I know we can do this together. We just have to trust one another. We have to be respectful of one another, and we have to be persistent, and we can bring about the change that I know we all are entitled to. We need to keep up the good fight. We need to keep up this fight. I know this is what God wants us all to do right now. I wanted to tell you I do appreciate you joining me today. I want you to always remember to have that free mind and never give up, my friends. I am J.R. Dukes.